Greetings to the American Jewish Congress. Thank you for the opportunity to address you via video. I know you have some questions about the growing anti-Semitism in America and in the world today. And at times of great political and social and economic stress, that's when we see increases in sectarianism, in ethno-nationalism, in extremist political movements. And we also see when cynical politicians exploit fear and bigotry to try to mobilize support. My opponent, Senator David Perdue, a sitting member of the United States Senate, was caught running an attack ad on Facebook in which he had digitally doctored an image of my face to lengthen my nose, one of the oldest anti-Semitic tropes in the world. But I think the bottom line is that the solution has to start with leadership. We need leaders who bring us together, who remind us of our common humanity, and who call us to unity and solidarity, to recognize that what brings us together is greater than what drives us apart. We need to focus on how we can achieve things together rather than focus on our differences, rather than allowing cynical politicians like my opponent to try to inflame hatred to score political points. I know many of you also have questions about U.S.-Iran relations and the Iran nuclear deal and the Iranian nuclear program. And there's no doubt that an Iranian nuclear weapons capability would pose an existential threat to U.S. allies, including Israel, and pose a critical threat to our own national security. And that's why the JCPOA, which limited Iranian nuclear enrichment and subjected Iran to a strict international monitoring and inspections regimen, was a step in the right direction. I opposed the Trump administration's unilateral withdrawal from the JCPOA. And now, in order to ensure that Iran does not develop nuclear weapons, we're going to need another treaty, either based on the prior framework or on renegotiated terms, to ensure that Iran does not develop nuclear weapons. You have questions about the BDS movement, and I personally oppose the BDS movement. I think it singles out Israel. I think that it is bad for U.S.-Israel relations. I want to see the Israeli economy thrive. I want to see U.S.-Israel relations deepened and strengthened. So my personal view, I oppose the BDS movement. I will, however, defend any American's First Amendment right to criticize or to personally boycott any country they want in the world. That's free speech. While I will vigorously oppose any effort, any legislative effort, any policy effort to force the U.S. government to boycott or divest from our great ally, Israel. Question about Israeli annexation of the West Bank. I oppose Israeli annexation of the West Bank. What I want is for Israel's security as a homeland for the Jewish people to be secured and strengthened with U.S. support. I want to see movement toward a negotiated two-state solution. I want all people living in the region, regardless of their faith or nationality, to live in peace and security with political freedom and human rights. I oppose terrorism by Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah and other terrorist groups that target Israel. I support Israel's right to defend itself. I want to see deepened U.S.-Israel alliance and relations and strong U.S. support for Israeli self-defense. I oppose the PA's corruption and political dysfunction. And I also oppose the Israeli government's demolition of Palestinian civilian infrastructure and homes. And I oppose efforts to expropriate or annex land or territory. I want to see a negotiated settlement. Diplomacy is the way forward. And as for the current direction of peace and peace negotiations in the Middle East, I think that the normalization of relations between Israel and Gulf Arab states is a positive development. But what we're not seeing right now is any strong American leadership toward a negotiated settlement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And that has to be the basis for an enduring peace deal. It's been over half a century now that this has been unresolved. It's a tragedy, a historic tragedy. But ordinary Israelis, ordinary Palestinians, and the American people all want to see a negotiated peace, all want to see a two-state solution. And we need strong U.S. leadership to that end. So thank you so much for the invitation to address you, and I appreciate you.